I'm sitting in between some trees on a park bench here in the World Agroforestry Campus in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. And where we are sitting, I'm sitting here with Laura Mukhwana, who is the GLFX coordinator in Nairobi. Where Laura and I are sitting is right at the edge of one of Kenya's largest forests, and that's Karura Forest. So it actually feels like we are in the forest. I can hear birds. I've seen some monkeys here as well. You know, this is really like being right in the forest. You don't even feel that you are in an office complex. What is, part of your responsibility as a researcher or your work as a researcher?
Thank you so much, Michael. My goal and aim is to ensure that people understand the importance of these forests to the economy, to the livelihoods of the people, the incredible biodiversity and why it's important to them. Because people look at forests, people look at natural resources in general and sometimes fail to understand their importance. But for me, as a researcher and having that background and understanding why forests are important to the ecosystem, why forests are important to people's livelihoods, I think that's a major goal for me, to really ensure that this value is, people understand their value and understand why it's important to conserve them. Because maybe some people view them as just, this is land we can convert to real estate, we can do other uses with them. But just trying to understand, even especially in this context of climate change, urban forests are really, really important when it comes to climate resilience. They, for example, in urban areas, if I can use the example of urban forest, in urban areas, of course, with climate change, you're expecting and of course the built up environment, we're expecting higher temperatures, we're expecting things like flooding, but then urban forests help with that. They help to regulate the temperature, they purify the air, because in urban areas you have this issue of air pollution. They purify the air. They also help to reduce runoff water, especially when it rains, so helping to reduce flooding in a sense. And then at the same time, they offer shade. That's a really important use. They offer shade. At the end of the day, they protect against extreme weather, and they also capture carbon. At the end of the day, there are carbon sinks which help to absorb carbon from the atmosphere and store it. So they're really important for climate change mitigation and adaptation. Then I think the other really important value when it comes to the health aspect. So of course there's that mental health aspect of the aesthetic value of reducing stress. During COVID-19, we saw that a lot of people were visiting the green spaces and urban spaces in Nairobi to relieve stress. So it's so different, when you're in a forest and you're walking through a forest, it's really the clean air, just seeing the greenery, it really has a calming effect. So it's very important for our health at the end of the day, and that's why it's so important to protect these spaces and conserve them for ourselves and also for future generations.
Welcome back to Africa Science Focus, the science and development show from SciDevNet. I'm Ogechi Ekeanyao. You are just listening to Laura Mukhwana, coordinator of the Global Landscapes Forum, Nairobi, Kenya, as she spoke to our reporter Michael Kaloki about the importance of forests in Africa. In this episode, we journey into Africa's forests, not only for their towering trees or iconic wildlife, but also for the vital food they provide. And protecting them has never been more urgent. Across Africa, forests are lifelines for hundreds of millions of people. From food and heating to income and shelter, these ecosystems sustain daily life. But their role in feeding communities is often overlooked, even as protecting them has become more urgent now more than ever. According to the United Nations World Food Programme, more than 40 million people across West and Central Africa are struggling to feed themselves. As communities turn increasingly to forests for survival, the pressure on these ecosystems is intensifying. And at the same time, deforestation, climate change, illegal wildlife trade, and land degradation are taking a heavy toll. The Food and Agriculture Organization once said Africa is losing forests faster than ever. Nearly 3.94 million hectares vanish each year, up from 3.4 million a decade ago. This accelerating loss is weakening ecosystems and undermining the forest-based food systems that so many people depend on. So how do we protect our forests and our food? In this episode, we hear from forest researchers and scientists who are working on sustainable solutions that protect ecosystems and ensure food security across the continent. But how exactly do forests contribute to food on our tables? Laura explains the crucial connections many of us don't see.
Forests are really important when it comes to food security. They do provide several, they're important in several ways. They do provide goods like food. And when we talk about food, where they're a rich source of, and forests and trees, they're a rich source of nuts, fruit, seeds, tubers, leaves, mushrooms, honey, wild meats, and insects, which provide essential nutrients for people's. And I think it's for people's diets. And I think it's really important to stress the fact that a lot of the people who are dependent on forests for such kind of services are often poor. So it's a very important nutritional source for them. They provide, of course, fuel at the end of the day, which is very important. In Kenya, for example, and that I would say that cuts across Africa, majority of the people use fuel wood as a major source of energy for cooking. So fuel wood, that would be charcoal and firewood. So in Kenya, I think almost around 70% of our energy for cooking comes from wood at the end of the day. And then they provide water resources, which are of course vital for food security. At the end of the day, you need water to be able to support agriculture. They offer habitats for biodiversity, including vital pollinators, insects, and then they're food safety nets in times of crisis. You know, we spoke about climate change, and now when there are things like droughts and when there are things like floods, they do provide an alternative source of food, especially for the communities that are dependent on them. And then while they provide, I mentioned wild meat, they're an essential source of protein where people are able to access them. That is, so I would say they're very, very important when it comes to enabling the access to nutritious foods and diverse diets for the poorest households.
As a scientist, as a researcher, what role do you play in the management system of a forest? Is your role as a researcher critical? And if so, how and why?
Of course, I would say it's critical because, like I mentioned before, ensuring that the values that forests provide, making that information publicly available is very important, because if people do not understand the value of something, they wouldn't be convinced to conserve or preserve it at the end of the day. So I think as a researcher, that's one important thing that we do and we try to do to ensure that it's very clear. This is how this is why making it our role is very important to making a case for the conservation of forest, like even going as far as I haven't done this, but just doing valuation of the ecosystem services provided by forests, for example. So doing that, being at the forefront. I know for some forests they've been able to do that, but in terms of the values of forests, the statistics I'm aware of are that, for example, in Kenya, forests provide the livelihood base for around 82% of the households, and that's according to the National Landscape and Ecosystem Restoration Strategy 2023 to 2032. And then at the end of the day, they offer direct employment for over 4 million Kenyans. And then they also do have a major role in contributing to the GDP of the country. So, researchers have that. They have the methodologies at the end of the day to value the ecosystem services provided by forests. And then the other thing is, I think a vital role that researchers play is advising on the best methods to conserve forests and to protect them, especially restoration when it comes to restoration.
Laura talked about the importance of sharing research with communities to preserve our forests. But what about the knowledge that already exists within those communities? Traditional practices passed down through generations often hold the key to sustainable forest management. Richard Sufo, a Cameroonian scientist at the Center for International Forestry Research and World Agroforestry, tells us how these indigenous approaches can make all the difference.
My name is Richard Sufo. I'm a scientist at C4 ICRAF, based in Yaoundé. And as I'm mostly work on forest management and climate change aspects in the Congo Basin. So that is all the 11 countries from COMIFAC that are country leading having forests as a main environment in Central Africa.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Sufo. How important is traditional indigenous knowledge for future food security?
Yes, concerning this, we can say that, I'll take an example because few years ago, when I was working in a local remote area in Southeast Cameroon, we were going there as experts with scientific knowledge. But it turned out that when we are moving there, we saw all this traditional knowledge or all these traditional people were mastering better than us all the resources and all the foods, all the names or traditional name or local names or all the trees, all the food that you have there. And we were just learning from them. So it means that those traditional knowledge are really important for the sustainable management of forests because then they master all these activities or all these names, all these different plants and foods. They are more better than us scientists, and it is better today to trust these different knowledge at local level so that we can work with them to see how we can have a very good future and a forest management and a sustainable forest management in Central Africa.
Thank you, Doctor. Now, to widen the scope a bit further, what are some traditional forest management practices in Africa, and how can they be improved?
The traditional, let's talk about agroforestry and let's say mixed culture, mixed agriculture. From many years, I was seeing that local people used to mix different crops together and to do agroforestry without having all this modern way of doing. So their traditional way of doing agriculture and doing their daily life agriculture in contact of the forest, they were trying to see how to manage to have all the crops in the same plot. That was agroforestry without knowing. But nowadays we are seeing that modern way of thinking are coming with different way of doing agriculture or doing agroforestry, and we see that way of doing with the local knowledge is better than the way we are doing now or proposing to doing let's say agroforestry. So it means that if we take from the local knowledge or from the local knowledge of doing let's say agroforestry or doing mixed crops, it will be better than the way we are coming with modern way of doing, and it is better to follow up and to see how to go back and listen for these ancients that have a better way of doing agriculture. So that's two examples that I can take regarding this.
Thank you, Dr. Sufo. So basically, it's about the community coming up with the ideas of what they would like to see done, and then incorporating that with suggestions from people who are from outside, rather than people coming into a community and dictating what they think should be done.
That's it. I was working for a project one time, and as I said, we is like we are modern people. We think in our offices, in our labs, and we think that it is the better way that can work in the fields. And we bring these innovations in the fields and see that sometimes these innovations are not taken or are not taken by local people, and sometimes it fails. So it is better to see how to go in the field and ask and see and analyze the way they are doing before developing a project, or before seeing how to bring new things that will fit with with what they are doing in the field. So that's the way it can work. Yeah. Today we are talking about community forests. I don't know, it is a concept that come from the modern or from the government. But before that community forest coming out, you know that in the village, in a different village, before all this were done, there were this way of managing a landscape, or what do you call, like a landscape where community have to do their works. They do like, okay, in a landscape that belongs to a village, they identify very well where they can do agriculture, where they can do fishing, where they can go and collect an NTFP, where they can go and have the different activity that will help them to feed themselves daily. And people live in that different forest landscape daily. That they don't collect, or they don't do agriculture to save the hills, or to save what they have taken from the nature. So they then go in the forest and collect it and live daily. So that way of doing was like they were managing their landscape, knowing that those landscape are not really are not cannot stay cannot stay intact. So they see if it is possible to manage and to preserve the different products that are in the forest, doing like eating HTFP and going just to collect the one that falls down. And today we see that the way we are doing, or the way modern world are doing, we are destroying. And at those times, managing the forest as a landscape for them was a good way. And today we call it as a for community forest. But before, this way of managing forest, they know that there were place for let's say agriculture, there were place for to do raising, to do fishing, and it was really well organized. So they know that if they exploit, or they exploit more product from the forest will disappear. So it was a way to manage, and it can be a study. And I think it is what we are calling now in some of our projects engagement landscape, where we know that people used to we need to be frequent and permanent somewhere, and to learn from what people were doing before, and see if that can be replicated, or or if that can be ameliorated a little bit, to have a very good way to achieve the sustainable forest management that all the NGO, the UN organization are willing to. So it will be great to do that way.
Richard highlighted the value of indigenous knowledge. But how does this look when put into practice? Joel Ngobi, founder of the School Food Forest Initiative, has been adopting these principles to cause some changes in Ugandan schools and communities. He spoke to us about his work using agroforestry to improve food security right where it's needed the most.
I am Ngobi Joel, Ugandan citizen, I'm currently in Kalangala. I am the co-founder of the School Food Forest Initiative. I am also a founder of the organization under which the School Food Forest Initiative is under. The organization is called the Beautiful Periods Uganda.
Thank you very much for that, Joel. Now, as a young man growing up here in Kenya, it would be quite common to hear people saying that in neighboring Uganda, you just walk into the forest and find food in plenty. To me, this was quite interesting, Joel, because I thought that it's quite interesting that forests play a significant role when it comes to food provision in Uganda. I mean, you just walk into the forest and you find food. So maybe I could ask you, from your perspective, what role do forests play in your country, Uganda, in regards to food security?
In Uganda, forests are natural pantry. They're a natural pantry for food, like a food basket, providing wild fruits, nuts, medical plants, mushrooms, and edible greens. We have so many species. I cannot mention all of them here. We had food that grows in the ground, that grows naturally. We have palm trees. We have different species of mangoes, different species of oranges, different species of berries. So many of them that I cannot maximize or say out now. But in many rural communities in Uganda, depend on these food forests, especially during the dry seasons or economic hardships. So forests are deeply linked to the local diets and nutrition and food resilience here in Uganda.
Now, you're the co-founder of the School Food Forest Initiative. Could you tell me about the initiative and the activities you undertake under the initiative?
Yes, true. I am the co-founder of the School Food Forest Initiative, and it is a youth-led project that I co-founded to promote agroforestry and food security in schools, where we establish food forests and fruit tree nurseries, and also food forests on those underutilized school grounds in the underserved schools of rural communities. We also engage students and learners in fruit tree planting and conservation. We also train communities in sustainable land restoration practices. And the latest and newest of all is where I am now in Kalangala, where we are trying to train. Kalangala is naturally known for palm oil growing, where we get our cooking oil. I know you Kenyans and all the world use cooking oil. And we, as the School Food Forest Initiative, are encouraging these farmers and empowering them with the knowledge on how to sustainably use or grow these palm trees or palm oil trees without eradicating the natural forests they found there. Because we know also palm trees are also forests, but they are not natural forests. So we do not want the humanly brought trees to breed the cutting down of the natural forests that have been found on the island. So we want them to coexist, and that is how we are engaging the sustainable forest practices, where we are encouraging boundary fencing. We're using natural trees or natural species. We are also encouraging interplanting of the natural species and palm trees, indigenous trees, and some of the foreign species of palm oil trees, so that we can all coexist with the natural forests, natural trees, and encourage biodiversity and the ecosystem.
How exactly does it work from a practical point of view?
So if they accept our initiatives at the district, the DEOs, district education officers, the chief education officers. So if they accept our project, we go in, start the operations by getting seedlings, identifying indigenous seedlings to plant in the school forest, the fruits that we need. We identify, come in as a community with the children. We elect a club or a body that will govern these forests, these food forests. So we train them. We go in, we plant with them in the planting season, like the one we are in that is about to end right now. We are actively planting in Kalangala. So we go in, monitor the progress after the planting. We monitor, always doing visits at those schools, those communities, weekly check-ins until the forest comes up. We keep on checking in, monitoring and training them on how to prune fertilization and everything, seeking for support, fertilizers, collaborators on the project, until that is what is going on right now, and that is the technical veto, everything.
Now, have you incorporated any traditional forest management practices as part of your initiative?
Yes, we have. We have integrated indigenous knowledge, such as intercropping, seasonal planting patterns, and the use of native drought-resistant tree species, like some of them that I mentioned. We have also encouraged them to use drought-resistant practices and practices that also align with local culture and environmental conditions.
And what impact has the initiative had for the students, the forests themselves, and the community?
All right. The learners have become more environmentally conscious and skilled in agroecology, because in the communities we've worked in, specifically like in Namutumba, on the measurement or the scale of how informed the learners were, because we first did an initial assessment before we started the work in the schools. We did an initial assessment on the learners on how they know about environmental practices, forestry practices. Many of them did not know about this, because these are things I think they are not really taught in the school. And the rate was around 10%. But currently we did a mid assessment, and came out as learners have increased to 70% as per now. They are knowledgeable about forest, knowledgeable about biodiversity, knowledgeable about the ecosystem and the climate at large. Yeah, so the forests planted have also improved biodiversity and soil health. Communities have benefited through increased food availability, climate awareness, and participation in restoration efforts.
That's all from us at Africa Science Focus today. If you want to find out more, head to the SciDevNet website, and that's www.scidev.net. Today's show was produced by Alice Hest, with editing by Titilope Fadari and Ogechi Ekeanyao, and reporting by Michael Kaloki. I'm Ogechi Ekeanyao. Until next time, goodbye. Africa Science Focus is produced by SciDevNet and distributed in association with your local radio station. This podcast was supported by the Science Granting Council's initiative, which aims to strengthen the institutional capacities of 18 public science funding agencies in sub-Saharan Africa.